Hi, everybody. I thought I would do a short series of videos about cars that I've known growing up, either that I've owned or that people that I know owned. And I'm going to start out with a 1935 Chevrolet two-door sedan that my aunt had. Now, my aunt lived with her mother, my grandmother, and this was my first contact with the car, really. It was, as I said, a two-door sedan. The front doors were suicide doors, so they opened from the front and hinged in the back. And the interior always kind of amazed me in a way. It was rather modern. It had bucket seats and had a big back seat to it. And the upholstery was kind of like mohair, and the spare tire was on the back of the car. There was no trunk. I have a feeling that the jack and so forth was stowed under the back seat, but I never actually saw that. As such, the car would have had a six-cylinder overhead valve engine, had big running boards, and I remember this car up to about age 8 when my aunt bought a 48 Plymouth Special Deluxe four-door sedan. Now, this car I became a lot more familiar with because actually she, in a way, got me started driving. It wasn't really all of driving. I would shift gears for her, and generally worked out fairly well. At least I didn't shift into reverse while going forward, so it worked out pretty well. I knew when she wanted to shift, and so I did that. So I remember when she got the car during World War II. Cars were essentially not available. People had to make do with buying a used car and or keeping the one they had going as best they could. And so they would patch and keep doing most anything to keep it on the road. Uh, Tires were essentially unavailable, and gas was rationed. So it was and not much too. You had A, B, and C levels of rationing, and for people that were in defense work, they had the best uh, gas ration, and people, regular citizens, had to make do with very little gas. So after the war, there was a lot of pent-up demand for cars. So car dealers went crazy. They starting like late 46, 47, they uh, they started selling cars like mad. And the demand was so high, they put people on waiting lists. And oftentimes they charged what they could, premium added to the price of the car, just because they could. And so my aunt paid, as I remember, around $2,000 for that 48 Plymouth. Now I don't know what the actual retail price was because this is long before they had Moroni stickers on cars to get you an idea of how much the car should go for. But I have a feeling that for $2,000 she could have gotten a DeSoto at least. But she wound up paying $2,000 for this Plymouth. It's a nice car, and it was a very reliable car too. She never really had any problem with it, except I think late in its life it blew a head gasket, and so she had to have the head gasket replaced. But I don't think it did any real engine damage because she ran it quite a bit after that. So it an interesting car, and I have the keys to it. When she passed away, um, this is one of the things that I got. I went through her effects, and she was my favorite aunt. So this is the ignition key. This one right here. Let's see, there we go. That's aluminum, very, very light. And there was a trunk key, and I believe that was it. And then there was a glove box key right there. So there were three keys. And if you grew up in the time that I did, you might remember these little tags that would come in the mail from disabled veterans. You would add them to your key ring so that if your key ring was lost, they would send the keys back to you by mail. And they don't do that anymore, but or at least they don't advertise doing it. So anyhow, that was her car, and it had no power equipment. It had the flathead 6 and 3-speed manual. Now my uncle, her brother, had a 47, and he claimed that he didn't have the synchromesh on low gear, but I think it did. I know my aunts had synchromesh on low gear, and I would get to drive it in the alley, backing it up and getting it ready for her to leave when she, heaven forbid, she would come out to the car and it wouldn't be ready to leave. I would take care of that. In the meantime, learning how to drive the car, and it was, as I say, very dependable. One thing about my aunt, though, she had a tendency to run out of gas, and when that happened, her mother, my grandmother, would let her have it verbally, and she would just not bother filling it up. When she would fill it up, she would put a couple dollars worth in, and that was it. Never, seldom did she fill it up. Just put in a certain amount, and sometimes very inconvenient places to run out of gas. But never any serious problem with that. No accidents or anything like that. But it was one of the things that she did. Another thing she did with that Plymouth was she would leave the keys in the car. That's what you did. It's a small town, and nobody stole cars, and so you didn't have to worry about where the keys were, and you should know they're in the ignition. So it'd be in the front of the house with the keys in it, and that was the story of the '48 Plymouth. It had a long life, and I can't really tell you how many years she had, but she had, I'd say, at least 10 years. And after that, she got a '49 Ford four-door sedan. She bought it used from a lady that she knew, and I couldn't believe the difference in steering. Now, her six-cylinder Plymouth was pretty easy to steer. That '49 Ford with the flathead 8, that was that when parking maneuvers, boy, that was something to push around. And women drove cars that required a lot of effort and didn't even think about it. She didn't have an automatic transmission car until 1974. Yeah, 1974, she finally got an automatic transmission car. So that generation uh, just did use manual shift. In, in fact, I have a I have a feeling that uh, she she may not have had to take a test for a driver's license. Back in that day, you just applied for one, and I think you first started out, you just started driving. And then later on, they got into the business of issuing driver's licenses. But that gives you a little bit of an idea of that '48 Plymouth. I'll always remember it. And of course, when I remember it, I remember my aunt and my grandmother, and very fondly too. So That's my first installation of my little blog here on cars that I've known.